Hey there, everybody. You are tuning in to the very first ever, that's right, YouTube video and podcast audio for the Uncle Dad Talks show. I am Uncle Dad, and with me is, if you haven't listened to the show, we'll get to that in a second. We are Uncle Dad Talks, and with me is the ever so handsome, the tarot certified sexiest co host, and now they can see you. Let's give it up for Just Mike.
And they're all disappointed, too. I know.
Just Mike, we are here doing this for the first time, eye to eye, for the public consumption, I guess you would say. We'll see how this goes. But Mike, I always give the spiel about what this show is, but I think it's your turn.
What we do here?
Yeah, what do we do here at Uncle Dad Talks?
Well, as someone has said, we talk to all walks of life. I think we would consider ourselves mostly an interview-driven podcast where we talk to people who do something, right? So artists, musicians, writers, illustrators, actors, actresses, directors.
Boom.
You name it. If you have something to say and you're doing something to contribute to the world, we'll talk to you and we'll have an interview with you and we will try to help promote whatever it is that you're doing, as long as it isn't something horrible like killing puppies.
Yeah, definitely. That'll never happen here. Please know that you can always come to this channel, listen to this podcast, and never have to worry about that. I do want to kind of give a little caveat to what you're saying. Not only do we do all that good stuff, but we also have like our own little family of characters that show up from time to time in this show. We also have little unique events that happen sometimes on this show. So yeah, while it is mostly an interview-driven podcast, you'll never know what'll happen. One day, it might be a game show. It might be a quiz show. It might be me making Mike eat something from 1960, which has happened. Isn't that right, Mike?
Several times. That's right. Yes.
So you never know what's going to happen, and we are just so happy for you to be here on our YouTube channel, on our podcast channel, all that good stuff. Now, what you're going to notice is that all the episodes going forward are going to be 152 forward, are going to be on what's called the Uncle Dad Talks show platform, which will be YouTube, our website, UncleDadTalks.com, every podcast streaming network service you can think of, just Uncle Dad Talks show. Sorry, the Uncle Dad Talks show. So the space Uncle Dad, one word, space talks, space show. How many spaces did I put in there?
I don't know, but I've been meaning to tell you that I need more space. So you're doing great.
Thank you. Good man.
All right. Alley-oop.
Alley-oop indeed. I love it. Aaron Fox in the house.
Yeah. Oh, nice. Thank you.
Yeah, there you go. And if you want to learn more about that, what you got to do is listen to the other episodes 1 through 151, which is just the Uncle Dad Talks. Just Uncle Dad Talks. That's it. Uncle Dad space Talks, and you will find all episodes from 1 to 151 on there. Mostly without video, just audio. But now, eventually, we might import the audio here. Maybe, I don't know.
We'll see what we have time for.
Yeah, good point. This does take a lot of time. And this is our first one, so please, everybody, be kind, because we're trying our best to figure this out. We are two older gentlemen, and, I just wish there was a guide for me to figure that out. I don't know, but maybe there is. And if you know what I'm talking about, thank you for being an avid listener. So, Mike, just to quickly kind of put a bow on this, and I'll talk about my side in a second, can you just tell the audience who you are, if they don't know who you are, and your involvement in this show?
Yes. Well, hello. My name is Just Mike on the show, and also known as Mike Hampton. That's my full name. I'm an artist, illustrator, graphic designer, former rapper, and former three-point champion. But yeah, so I'm co-host of the show here on Uncle Dad Talks, and I do the graphics for the show and all the place cards that you see that tell you who's on our show and what event we're at covering. I put all that together. And I just like to chime in with my smart street wisdom over the years of, growing up in Louisiana and California and helping the Uncle Dad Talk show become what it is destined to be.
I love that. And we're also best bros.
That's right.
I like to always throw that in there.
Yeah, I know you.
Yeah, we're friends. Yes, and on the show, I am the what do you call it? The number one Beatle? I don't want to say that though. We're all the number one Beatles in my heart. So together we are the Beatles. There is no one that's better. I'm not Paul. I'm not whatever. I'm just as important as that person is, and Mike is just as important as I am. But I am the lead, I guess, host of this show. But you know what? There's going to be some episodes where Mike will take over and he'll do his thing, and vice versa, it'll be me. But we're here always exploring the arts, exploring stories, exploring fun, and exploring mysteries, which will tie into what I'm about to talk about. And I am so thankful and grateful that you are here. Mike is as well. I mean, this is officially our 5th year. We're on the road to 5 years. 5th year anniversary comes in May, so keep an eye out for that. More content to come for that, of course. And I am Uncle Dad. I am your host, and I am forever grateful for you being a part of the Uncle Dad family. So thank you. And I know Mike agrees with that statement.
I do wholeheartedly. And for our 5th year anniversary, we'll both be here naked.
Oh, and for free, not on OnlyFans either. Nice.
That's right. Yes. I don't know if you'll see it because it's, the camera is very high up close to our faces, but we could be naked.
We could be naked. You're right. I like that. And speaking of naked, let's get down to the naked truth about this mystery that we got to cover. That's right. What you're going to see is the not documentary. What you're going to see is an interview that I got to partake in by interviewing Jeff Finn. I know I always have a hard time remembering names, just so you guys know.
Yeah, let it be known, if there's a name to be slaughtered, Uncle Dad will do it, or he just won't say the name, and the guest will look strangely at us. Why didn't we say his name? So be on a watch for that. That's always fun.
We are with Jeff Finn, and we talk about his DocuMystery series. That's a 3-part series. And Mike, because I feel like you are the resident Jim Morrison fan, can you tell them the name of this documentary really fast and what your thoughts about it were?
The name of it, I believe, was Before the End. Mm-hmm. And it was a 3-part docuseries. DocuMystery. It's very mysterious. It's like Scooby-Doo.
Very.
Yeah, and so I guess I'll throw it in a nutshell. Is Jeff is a huge fan as a young boy of the Doors, and obviously the band's frontman Jim Morrison. I didn't even realize this because I'm aware of the Doors. I like some Doors songs. I'll play them from time to time. But apparently there was all this controversy around Jim Morrison's death, whether he died or not, whether he faked his death. I didn't know anything about it. So starting to watch it, I was taken by surprise. And it's actually very interesting because he talks to a lot of people that grew up with Jim, knew Jim, had relationships with Jim, have drawings from when Jim was a teenager here in Alameda, California. Yeah. And he just goes really deep down the rabbit hole, just trying to find out what really happened to Jim and if he's still alive. And I don't know, it kind of makes you think he's still alive.
Yeah, and in the interview, he kind of lets you. He never gives too much away, but when I talked to Jeff, what I kind of gathered is that he really wanted to make you form your own opinion and your own idea, because he's not telling you that he's right, because he doesn't know, but he's telling you in a way that it makes you think about it, right? Like, well, maybe he is. But let me ask you this. Should we want to find these people, or should we be okay with them kind of living their life?
Well, I think it's kind of one of those things with all conspiracy theories, right? Like everyone will form their own opinion, and it's kind of fun to not really know the truth. Like, did we go to the moon? Like there's all kinds of controversy and conspiracy theories about that, right? But Jim Morrison being dead or alive is just as big as whether or not we landed on the moon. So everyone will have to just sit with their own weird or not weird opinion on it. I don't know. I don't think that if someone faked their own death, they obviously don't want to be found.
Right.
Which makes it more fun to try to find them, I think.
So it's like, Jim Morrison is the real life Where's Waldo then?
Yes.
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 Okay.
Yes, exactly. Let's make a game.
Where's Jim?
Or a book. I'm sorry, a book.
Oh, I like that.
I'll draw it.
Uncle Dad Talks presents Where's Jim?
Yeah, maybe we can get Jeff to sponsor it.
I like that idea.
Mm-hmm.
I know. So let me ask you this. You weren't on the interview that we're about to show, but you want to tell our audience sometimes you're not here on these interviews, but that's okay. You're a busy man, right? You weren't here for that one. I took care of it. But sometimes you're just not here.
Sometimes I'm not here.
Yeah. I guess
they call for me and they say, He's not here. You know, a lot of my work involves me being on the road. And so there are times where I'm just not available for the actual interview, but hopefully I can chime in and say a bunch of nonsense with you before or after, like we're doing now.
Exactly. And I was telling, I wanted to share this with you, Mike, since you haven't heard it yet. I told Jeff that when I was watching the video or the first episode, I actually took a microdose of shrooms to watch it. And he was so elated that I did that because he was like, that's the way you should discover that type of thing. That's the way you should listen to the door. That's the way you should kind of think. Because if you watch the documentary, which people will on January 13th when it comes out on video on demand, but when you watch it, it does have a very psychedelic, like visual aspect to it. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, he does a lot of like that negative effect with the camera. There's a lot of, cutaways to just kind of some abstract footage.
Yeah.
Of, like when he's traveling or when he's talking to someone who doesn't want to be on camera. So there's a lot of cool visuals, which I think goes in part with music like The Doors and of that era, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the 70s was the psychedelic era, right? That was 70s and late 60s, right? That was the
That's
era
right.
is that the era of free love? I don't know.
I would say, yeah, that is late 60s for sure. Yes.
Okay. I like the era of free love. That sounds nice.
Yeah.
So, I don't want to spend too much time just you and I talking because we have a great interview. We had 30 minutes of awesome video with me, Jeff Finn, talking about his latest project. And mind you, everybody, this gentleman, Jeff Finn, spent 38 years of his life working on this project. Mike, you're an artist, and I'm sure there hasn't been a project that you have done for over 30 years. You know what I mean?
No, just the project of my life, which, who knows how that's going. But yeah, I mean, talking about a fan, I think the only person I don't know, my favorite band is the Red Hot Chili Peppers, right? And so would I spend 38 years, if Anthony Kiedis died years ago, trying to find out if he was really dead? I don't know.
If it didn't fit right, maybe you would.
Maybe I would.
Yeah. I've been thinking about that personally. I feel like I would dive down a rabbit hole if like Kevin Smith might have died in a way that didn't add up,
Yeah. Or maybe, I should really get to the bottom if Bruce Willis really has aphasia, dementia, whatever it is now. I should go figure this out and see if it's the real deal or not.
I mean, I'm pretty sure that is, but
You are?
yeah, we don't want we don't want that community to come against us.
Okay. All right. Maybe you're right.
Yeah, that's a very real thing. Yes.
Okay. You think it's real? Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But one of the things too I wanted to point out with his work is that this is pretty much all funded by Jeff. He did everything on his own, and as an artist, you know how hard that is to just get everything to get out there and come out and finally get your artwork out there, and it's finally there. And so for him, he said it's about to hit 39 years this year, and he just can't believe it. So I can't tell you guys enough. Go check it out. Before the End. You're going to find it in all video on demand platforms for, I don't know the price of it, unfortunately, but it does come out January 13th. I'm sure it'll be on more streaming services as time goes on, but you have to go watch it. You have to see it and kind of form your own opinion. And especially if you love the Doors, 70s music, or even, Mike, even if you love true crime.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, like I said in the beginning, I'm not a huge Doors fan. I like some of their songs, but I was fully intrigued by this. Like, not knowing what to expect. I didn't even really realize that it was about the fact that his death was controversial at all. So I think it's highly entertaining and very interesting and definitely worth a watch.
You heard that. You heard
That's
that
right.
first. Mike Hampton approves. All right, everybody. Before we go, please check us out on Instagram at UncleDad Talks. That's where you can find the overall Uncle Dad life, everything, the promotions, all that good stuff. If you want to follow my man Mike over here, right there, you can just go to @MikeHamptonArt. And of course, when you listen to our show, if you don't want to watch it here on YouTube, you just want to listen, just go to UncleDadTalks.com. You'll find everything you need right there. Mike, am I forgetting anything?
I don't know. Are the listeners going to hear who we heard in the background on this show? Can we get an introduction to who that is?
Well, he's gone right now. So, you know what? That's for the OG fans. They know who that is.
Okay. All right. Sometimes there's a surprise guest that floats around in the background.
Every now and then, yeah. Two of them, actually, right? But we will see you guys all next week. And for the first time ever, live on video. Mike, we're not uncles, we're not dads. We're just someone you can talk to. and we'll see you all next week. All right, everybody. Uncle Dad here, hanging out with somebody who is going to prove something that's such a mystery. And I'm very excited to speak to this person. Let's give it up for filmmaker Jeff Finn. Jeff, how are you?
Hey, I'm good. Thanks for having me. How are you doing?
I'm pretty good, man. I'm very interested in learning the mind behind this fascinating series because it's such a. There's two things I noticed when I viewed it, and the first thing is well, I guess the first thing is more of a question. Where does I don't want to use the word where does the fascination come from of Jim Morrison before he dies or during his music? Like, when do you really dive into the fascination of Jim Morrison? Because I love, you can feel the passion behind this story.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Um, yeah, for me personally, uh, I guess I sort of worked backwards, if you will.
Yeah.
Obviously, a launch pad, a starting point is the death or the alleged death, as I say.
Right.
And then, you sort of retroactively work your way back to the origin, which is of course, his birth and his childhood, his formative years, who he was as a teenager, as a college student, who he was before he became Jim Morrison of the Doors.
Right.
And most people, I think, they don't really realize, or that maybe they forget, that he was 21 years old before the Doors formed. So he was already technically an adult.
Yeah.
And those 21 years are just generally, given a footnote in his larger life story. They're sort of glossed over because everyone is in such a hurry to get to the glamour of the sex, drugs, rock and roll and the Doors era, and but ironically, those 21 years are what shaped him the way they do for all of us. Your formative years form you, and forge you and develop you into who you become as an adult. And that certainly was the case with Jim. And he had a very turbulent and, I believe, traumatic childhood, and that helped inform who he later became.
So a follow up on that, why does that resonate with you so much? Because like I'm a big fan of like Kevin Smith, right? I love Kevin Smith, and he resonates to me in a way that I can go on and on about. And I'm curious, how does Jim Morrison? Why does he resonate with you so much?
You know what? I once met Kevin Smith.
Oh, nice.
A little aside, I haven't thought of this in years. I met him at what used to be Meltdown Comics.
Yeah, I know that. Yeah.
On Sunset Boulevard. And we ended up talking about before the end. I was in the early days of my doc, and I said, "Hey, would you be interested in,
yeah,
a producer or something like that?" And we had a lovely little talk. But anyway, I digress. But yeah, see, all things are connected, right? But with Jim, yeah, it's just again, working backwards, same way I worked backwards from his supposed death to his birth and his formative years. I also worked backwards from his rock stardom. Of course, the Doors are these legendary performers, and for good reason. They were brilliant and unique and unparalleled. And that says so much about them, that in an era where the Beatles were like the top, the Doors were right up there with them, and putting their own unique stamp on the late 1960s, early 70s, so that says a lot about their talent and their influence. But yeah, so I would backtrack from the rock stardom and, well, how did he get there? Like, where did it begin? What was his origin story, if you will? And that's, of course, where we go back to the formative years. And he started out as a writer, a reader, and then a writer and a poet. And that was, I think, who he really was at his core, was a poet and a writer and a genuine artist. He also was an amazing visual artist, which is rarely touched upon. So it's a rabbit hole. It could be argued that we're all rabbit holes unto ourselves. Mm-hmm. But Morrison had an amazing trajectory, like Alice in Wonderland, you know, and I've been down that rabbit hole for 39 years now.
Yeah, I want to touch on that in a second, but before I get to that, this whole concept of this film is like you presented as a docu-mystery, and I really haven't seen that too often in the docu-series world, right? In the true crime world, right? Usually it's like, hey, you kind of have the hard facts and that's it, right? But you're creating like almost like an experience out of it. Where does that concept come from? Is that just something you wanted to see as a person who enjoys documentaries, or is that something you just wanted to play around with?
Oh, it's a great question. You know, I've said this many times, you know, on the record that a number of people have told me over the years, "Hey, I think you coined a whole genre," you know, or I think you coined that term, documentary, and I don't know if that's true. I know I've been using the term uh, for since I started my production company Z Machine back in 2010. So I'm now entering year 15. This summer will be 15 years. And I've been using that term ever since I did my first tiny doc, which was a UFO doc called Strange Septembers. Um, but yeah, it just fit, you know, it fit, and I tried to bring new elements to the documentary genre with like lots of psychedelic colors, day glow colors. I wanted to really enliven the format, you know, with all due respect to the original format, where you know you would have this guy talking, and now we switch to this guy talking and this woman talking, you know, and it'd be very dry. And I wanted to really, you know, spice that up in tribute to Jim's psychedelic era, you know, and all the mysteries that go along with that, which are endless.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought up the visual aspect of things because so I personally microdosed myself mushrooms and I actually watched the first episode microdosed so I could get that feeling because I feel like that would make sense, right? And so I did that and the visuals and the feeling you get of everything really adds to that. Now, I'm not saying, hey, everybody go out there and do it. You know, obviously, if you're a part of that community already, you know what I'm talking about. But I you nailed the feeling of what I feel like a Doors mystery or Jim Morrison mystery documentary would feel like. Because the whole time as it's going with the visual aspect of things, I feel myself getting more and more hooked into what's happening, right? Like it feels like you're diving down the rabbit hole. So with the psychedelic aspect of things, how important do you think that is to the story?
Well, I guess it's a good thing that I'm drinking ayahuasca as we speak. So, no, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I was like, man, you went all in, huh? I
Uh,
normally do the show with a co-host named Mike, and he's actually partaked in that before. So we would add a whole thing about that. Yeah.
well, as a fan, genuinely, seriously, as a fan of microdosing, I'm tipping my cap to you there, and I think that's brilliant that you watched it in that context. You
Yeah.
know, I've done so myself, and it's a beautiful thing. You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, it's I'm being so silly here. Well, I'm sorry. What was the original question?
I was just asking, like, I mean, I love that. I love that, because it is, you know, it is a serious subject we're talking about, right? But let's have fun with it. But it's like the importance of psychedelics in this story.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. What's your thought on that?
Yeah, it's I mean, it's huge, you know. I mean, he was Jim Morrison, of course, didn't invent, you know, the psychedelic era, but he was a major player in that, and I might even argue that he defined it, you know.
Hmm.
Um, and that, of course, wasn't all that was to him musically or the Doors, you know. Um, but yeah, he was a hugely important figure, not just to the psychedelic era. I argue that he's a vastly vital component to you know, culture in general, you know, human history, and you know, at this incredibly late date in human history, while the planet is still spinning, hopefully,
Yeah.
you know, I think it's important to study him the way we study any icon or legend in cultural history. You know, I always say from, you know, George Washington to you know, Miles Davis, you know, who Jim loved, by the way, to you know, you name it, anyone who's in that pantheon, you know. it's, you study the past, right, to understand the present and to hopefully evolve and go forward in the future. And yeah, so I think approaching him from the context of his times, the psychedelic era was really important.
Yeah, and I also found it kind of like a parallel to what's happening in the world right now, because I would argue that the psychedelic era is kind of coming back in many ways, right? Like, mushrooms and cannabis and everything, right? There's a huge presence of it than it ever had before, and a legal presence, right? And so I felt that kind of like connection through the modern world to the past, right? In that sense, especially, microdosing at that time, you feel that connection of that. So talking about connection, you spent a lot of your life in this project, what what are like some of the highs of that, and what are some of the lows of that, if we can talk about that?
Oh, that's a great question. And yeah, to riff on what you prefaced that question with, I say it all the time, and it dates me. It makes me sound like the old dude that I am. I'm going to be 58 in February,
Oh,
so
you do not look 58 at all. Just know that.
yeah, I don't look a day over 57. Maybe 56 on a good day. But yeah, it's just amazing to be at this point, and to have the opportunity to spend that time down that rabbit hole. I never anticipated it. I mean, it's I guess you can't really anticipate anything when it becomes such a major part of your life. It just unfolds organically. But I often ask myself, like, where are the young people today, in their 20s or 30s, like, or college student age, that kind of thing, that would go out and form a band like the Doors, and again, it could be argued they were unique. There could never be another one, of course. Same with the Beatles, you know. But where are they? Like, why aren't they? The world is in such a hideous state, everyone's so polarized, and it's like, where are those young bands that are using music as a platform to protest against the powers that be, the way Jim did, and others, of course, his peers, So I often, that question really digs into me, like, and again, maybe I'm misinformed, maybe there are bands out there, but the only ones I can think of right now are Pussy Riot, who are brilliant,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Kathleen Hanna, who keeps on keeping on with Bikini Kill,
Yep.
and Tigra. I think she's amazing, but Kathleen's my age. She was born a little after me, and Pussy Riot's been around for over a decade. So where are the young bands right now? And I'm realizing that because I'm so tired this morning, I probably didn't answer the second part of your question.
No, you're fine. You're fine. But I do want to touch on that what you just talked about, and this is what I love. When we do this show, we always like to have an open conversation. So I love that we're doing that right now. But to touch on what you're saying about the youth, and I think it's kind of changed though, right? Like now, there isn't the band aspect of things, right? But I do think that there is an aspect of like the SoundCloud rap culture, right? The youth is more doing the digital side of things, I think, and they're doing the digital activism, right? Or they're doing social media in a way, or they're rapping, or they're producing music through the computer these days, right? To combat some sort of whatever things going in their life, right? But as far as like the band goes, you're right. I'm 35, and even I can tell you, like, I don't really know of any youth bands that are, like you said, in the Jim Morrison, age group, right, coming out and doing that. And maybe that's something that will be reignited, after this DocuMystery, right? Or maybe that's a new mystery. I don't know, but I find it fascinating that you bring that up. And but my second part of that question was, what are some of the highs and lows of you diving
Yes.
to this world?
Maybe I was subconsciously trying to
to avoid that.
that question. The high, that's a great question though, seriously. The highs, of course, there were so many. Just being in the position to do this is a high in and of itself, and I'm always grateful for, even on my shittiest days, and I've had so many. I mean, I'm a one-person operation working with freelancers. I'm not like Steven Spielberg or even Michael Moore.
Yeah.
I don't have a crew. I'm not part of Hollywood. I live in LA, but I work outside of Hollywood on the perimeter, to use Jim's Out here on the perimeter, there are no stars. Out
Ah,
here is stoned, immaculate. And I, I love that. I live that, you know. And so, yeah, the highs have been many, maybe too many to even recount. The lows, you know, during COVID, I was, I had just begun the process of like, holy shit, I got to rebuild this entire project to accommodate Mr. X, you know, which I did. We rebuilt the thing from scratch. But this happened during early COVID when I was like, well, are we all going to die? You know? And I remember riffing on, you know, my friends and I would riff on my title before the end. And it always had double meanings. But with COVID, it took on a whole other meaning like, holy shit, before the end of the world, maybe before the end of life as we know it. Like, I was like, wouldn't it be just my luck to spend all these years working on this project and then we're all going to die of some fucking
that's true. It's an invisible disease,
and
right?
I'll never get it out there. So that was a crazy time, as it was obviously for everyone. You know,
Yeah, right.
that was a
Yeah,
definite low. That was about the lowest of the low.
yeah. I imagine, yeah, because I was gonna say because you just spent so much time in that, COVID must have impacted that heavily, and obviously, it did. So my question to you now is like you're getting to the end of the end of the actual end, right? Like it's coming out finally, right? And
Yeah.
yeah, but before we reach that point, when it came to finalizing everything and getting everything where it needs to be, did you find yourself changing anything that you have worked on within that time? So, for example, did you think, when I recorded this at that moment, I was in this headspace, but now it doesn't feel like this makes sense anymore? Did you do any changing of that?
Uh, I suppose so. Yeah, and it's that's probably inherent in every creative process. You know, you're always refining, refining, refining. Like yeah, yesterday I did an interview for a podcast, and someone asked me when I finished, technically finished the project, and I was again, I've been fatigued,
Sure.
fatigued but grateful. You know, I'm just it's been a lot. And I said, yeah, that I technically finished it a few months ago, but that was kind of a ridiculous answer because the bulk of it was done a couple of years ago. And then I spent the last 2 years dealing with Hollywood sharks and charlatans and just you name it, like a movie. People wanting to sign me to some bullshit deal or some scam racket, and I had to kiss a lot of frogs, and that was its own process. It was just absurdity. But during that time, my editor and I would refine. We took advantage of that time to just fine detail. Go over everything. 100 times to make sure it was where we wanted it. And so we did. And there was a whole portion in there that I was going to add in the very late going, that was about, my personal feelings about AI and how it's turning so many things, even though it has positive uses, of course. It seems by and large, to my perception, it's kind of turning everything into almost like a literal cartoon. And I realized that there's a whole generation, Gen Z and Gen Alpha after them, that are going to see these photos of Jim Morrison on these Facebook pages or Instagram where he's generated by AI and he's got like 7 fingers on each hand, and he doesn't even look like Jim, just shit like that. And then, the notion of Jim as a hologram, like Tupac, and there's talk of that. And I started to realize that like between AI and holograms, Jim is literally in danger of turning into what one of his very close friends told me years ago, that his legacy was turning into a cartoon. And that was his words. That was his wording, not mine. And now I'm in fear that it is happening. So that's another reason I made this, to bring a deeper understanding to Jim the person, not just the rock star persona.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think to touch on the AI thing, I think you're right. Like it is changing the way we could see the past, right? Specifically like, the legends, the ones who aren't with us anymore, and they can now exist now, right? But not with the same heart, the same soul, any of that. Even if AI can always get very close, right? But like that what you said about the 7 fingers, like I'm sure that'll go away one day. But like that is the reality that we have.
Working out the kinks, yeah, the bugs, in the system. But
Yeah,
yeah, Yesterday I was on Facebook, responding to, comments on my Facebook page for the project. I have a Facebook that goes way back and Instagram. And, I saw on Facebook that someone posted a photo of this woman and said, "Wow, check it out from Woodstock." And everyone said, "That's not a photo of Woodstock." That's a
Whoa.
photo of a drag racing stadium in the early 70s. So, you know what I mean? And it was AI generated. And I was like, oh man, we're in
Wow.
the future of history just being turned into what? Like complete misinformation, and that's kind of frightening, when you really break it down. So again, my own small way with this project, I'm hoping to at least bring a lot of clarity to who Jim was, who he really was. Yeah. And who he still might be.
Yeah, we still exactly. Yeah, we're gonna get close to wrapping up here, but I want to ask you throughout your journey, and you're interviewing so many people as you have, you know, was there ever just, especially with the world of COVID, right? Like, what was the challenges of connecting with so many people and getting their, their words, if you will? Like, what is that challenge like?
Oh, damn. I mean, it was whew, it felt like a Herculean task, for because again, I'm largely one person, we're doing this. And there are a lot of moving parts, just the logistic component, the logistical aspects of, trying to interview 130 people on camera. It doesn't just happen overnight, like that. Obviously, it took years, just for that aspect alone. Then there was the funding, which was a glacial process unto itself, But yeah, just trying to research and connect with and earn the trust of 130 different people, you
Well,
know, was like slowly pushing a boulder up a mountain,
yeah.
That's how it felt anyway. And I was grateful for the whole thing, I'm not complaining in the sense of like, who did this to me? I did this to me. I've appreciated every moment of it ultimately. But yeah, it was a lot of literal heavy lifting, to bring it to the finish line.
Yeah, and with this project that has so much behind it, now there is also something that continues with it too, right? There is a tie-in book, correct?
Yes, yeah. So I've been researching Jim Morrison since I was 18 years old. October 2024 marked 39 years of my DIY research, and I spent 12 years making the DocuMystery before the end, searching for Jim Morrison. And then about 5 years ago, it was right before COVID and then into COVID, when I sort of came full circle on a book that I began in 1996, which was a book meant to do very similarly to Before the End, to show who Morrison was as a person versus the persona. And in those early internet days of 1996, I didn't get very far because I didn't even have a computer. So I've come full circle in that sense too. And the book is called 127 Fascination, Jim Morrison Decoded. And it's essentially complete. And I'm now looking into indie publishers, true indie publishers, not just indie as a corporate marketing genre, but real independent, fearless publishers. So I'm going to give it a number of months to see how that plays out. And, if it doesn't work to my satisfaction, then I'll self-publish it the way Jim self-published his own poetry back in the day.
I love that, man. I see, I don't want to make this like, I hope this doesn't sound too big of a compliment, but I see a lot of the tenaciousness of Jim Morrison in you. And maybe you kind of gotten a lot of that because of diving into that, right? But it's great for you to be that rebel of art because I think we need more people like that, right? We need to be not afraid to make art and make art the way we want to make it. It doesn't matter what story it is, right? Like let's make the art that we want, you know,
Right
so,
on.
right? That's how I always feel,
Thank you, Matt. By the way, that's a great compliment. It reminds me how I used to joke with my mother because I never met my biological father, and then at one point the joke was made, "Oh, maybe Jim's your biological father," and my mom would tease me and say, You never know.
Oh man, you never. That's a documentary in itself, man. Oh man. Well, before we actually wrap up here, I gotta know what do you want the audience to take away from watching this film?
I mean, honestly, my boilerplate, my stock answer is always the same. If nothing else, just a broader, deeper understanding. To look beyond the confines, the restrictions of the controlled narrative that's been in place since 1971.
Yeah.
Bill Siddons, the Doors original manager, again, he said, came back from Paris. He said, a sealed coffin, Jim's dead. End of story. And everyone took that at face value.
Yeah.
The media, the masses, and by and large, that narrative is still in place 53 years later. And I'm just asking people to look deeper, to drill down beyond that controlled narrative, and the controlled narrative was painted in black and white, as these big brush strokes. I want you to get out your fine detailed paintbrush and start going into the grayscale, the grayscale of nuances and details, fine point details. So yeah.
I love that. And where can our audience learn more about you, this project, all that good stuff?
The headquarters, if you will, is my production company. Again, I'm a one-man band, as it were. That's Z Machine, the initial Z, like Z for zoo, and then the word machine. So all one word, zmachine.net. That's my home base site, and that'll take them to all the pertinent, links for social media, the Facebook page, the Instagram page, that kind of stuff. So yeah.
That's amazing. And then if you want to tell the audience, when does the film come out again for on-demand stuff?
Yeah, it comes out in holy shit, is that right? What are we at? January 3rd. It comes out in 10 days.
10 days.
January 13th. It will premiere in streaming in the US, the UK, Canada, and Australia to begin. And then we're looking into other territories as we go. France, Germany, Japan, Mexico, you name it. And it will be available on the major platforms, Amazon Prime Video, Apple TV, Google Play, and YouTube TV.
Everybody, go check it out. Support. I always say this in every episode, support the art that we're making, because all this can't be for nothing. It has to be for something, and we can only do that if we support each other. So, Jeff, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for everything you've done. This was an absolute pleasure, and I'm so excited to see what the next chapter of your life goes into. Do you do another 38 years?
As I always say, I'll see you down the rabbit hole.
Yes, awesome. I'll see you down the rabbit hole indeed.
It's good to meet you, and thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. Thank you.